service. I'm Pastor Tommy. You guys are going to have to move way to the front or I'm going to be all alone by myself. And talking to a room this big would be very difficult. But anyway, as you can tell tonight, I've decided that I was going to come in and ride my bike. And you know, you're sitting here going, who in the world rides their bike around a church? Well, you know, this last Sunday, we had Newcomers Coffee, and the most encouraging thing that I heard at Newcomers Coffee was that there's many things in Williamsburg, but absolutely nothing like this church. And I said, you know what would be absolutely different from the other churches in this area? Well, if the pastor came in riding a bike. But there's more to this, and there's more of a reason why I'm riding a bike tonight. Let me ask you a question tonight, everybody who's come in. How many people who are with us tonight like to ride bikes? Has ridden a bike. There we go. Every hand in the sanctuary is up. At one point or another, I think we have all ridden a bike. And you know, the weather, from what I understand this weekend, is going to be amazing. Isn't that right, Dora? It's going to be great. It's going to be like in the 70s. And because it's in the 70s, I want to encourage you guys to get out and ride a bike. If you haven't done it in a while, I absolutely love riding bikes. I go down to the ocean front, and I'll go up the strip, down the strip. I'll put on some Jesus culture, maybe a little switch foot. And next thing you know, I'm lost in worship while I'm riding a bike. And with the weather getting amazing, luckily I got off that break later. This would have been an interesting service. What just happened? Pastor Tommy down. I do want to encourage you to do something out in nature this weekend. Why? Because it's good to get outside, be out in nature. You know, the other day I was working underneath the awning, and I heard drums and flute. And I literally started looking. I was like, the redcoats are coming! And they never appeared. I was looking, I ran around, I got my truck. I never found them, but I could hear them. It was like a whole battalion somewhere. And anyway, I got excited about it. So I want to encourage you this weekend, especially this weekend, get out and do something amazing out in this area, because you guys have an amazing area to get out into with Colonial Williamsburg. But anyway, so welcome to Wednesday night. Welcome to Refuel. I'm Pastor Tommy. I'm the Williamsburg campus pastor. On behalf of all Upward Church, I want to welcome you in. Thank you for being here tonight. And if you could all do me a huge favor, can everybody take a deep breath in? And let it out. Because part of what Wednesday night is about, it's about unplugging. It's about relaxing. You know, Wednesday night, Pastor Craig says all the time that prayer is the engine under the hood. And Wednesday night message is a good time to come in and just calibrate our lives, see where we are, what's been going on, get back into the Word. And I don't know if you knew, I'm a little bit excited about tonight's message, okay? As you know, if you were here last week, we started a series called Vision 2020. And a lot of people go to think that 2020 vision is perfect vision, when in reality, 2020 vision is actually vision at a distance. It's saying that from 20 feet, you can see something clearly. And I found this to be a very important fact for this series, because I think, as you know, we're going through past, present, and future. And we look at our past, the present, and the future. I think it's important that we step outside of ourselves and we really start to examine, okay, what went on there? What happened there? What's going on? So here's the deal. Why did I come and ride my bike tonight? Well, because it was cool. No, not just because it was cool. And this is my Bad to the Bone Beach Cruiser. As I said, I'm a huge fan. I love to get out, big bike enthusiast. But this is why I came in riding a bike tonight. What do they say about riding a bike? Once you know how to ride a bike, what do they say?
You'll never forget it.
You'll never forget it. You'll always know how to ride a bike. So once I learned how to do this as a little guy, and I had my first little, you know, back then it was the little GT. Me and Pastor Jesse was talking about it the other day. The chrome GT with the black seat and the pegs and the whole nine. As soon as I learned how to ride that bike, since that day, I've never forgotten how to ride a bike. But more importantly, you know what I've never heard somebody doing? I've never heard somebody walking around saying, man, I wish I could forget how to ride a bike. I've never heard somebody talk to someone else and say, man, you should really forget how to ride a bike. You know why you don't want to forget how to ride a bike? Because on top of it being something that's cool, and you can get out and you can have a good time. It's good to do in your leisure. It's good for exercise and fitness. I mean, you go to the sports club and the gyms, and they actually have bicycles that don't go anywhere. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm like, could we, hello, there's drive around the parking lot. They should have bike rentals there or something. But here's the deal. Nobody ever said, I want to forget how to ride a bike. You know why? Because on top of it being a nice recreation thing to do, it's actually a mode of transportation. I mean, a bike is a mode of transportation. If your car goes dead and you have a bike, you're still able to get around without asking anybody anything. You're just able to hop out in the shed, the back room. I had to go to the storage unit because there's not a lot of room in our townhome. But I go to the storage unit, I grab my beach cruiser this morning, and instantly I'm able to get from A to B. Okay? Now, you wouldn't stop and say, man, I wish I could forget how to ride a bike. So why would you stop and say, man, I wish I could forget my past? But how many times have you said that? I wish I could forget my past. Or you have somebody say, man, you just need to forget your past. You need to get rid of that. Don't even focus on that. Don't even look back there. Just forget about it. But here's the thing. If you forget something, you can't use it. If you forget about your past, you can't use your past. And the same way, if you forget how to ride a bike, you can't use a bike later. You have to go through that whole process again. And you start repeating things. So that's why I came in tonight and said, you know what, I'm going to ride around the sanctuary on a bicycle. Because I was praying for something that I could use as an illustration. And I said, what do people not forget? They don't forget how to ride bikes. Okay, but people tell us all the time, forget your past. Well, I'm going to tell you tonight, don't forget your past. Stop for a minute and look. I want to encourage you this week to stop and look at your past. To really, really look at your past. Now, it's good to look at your past, your present, and your future. But out of the three, your past is usually the hardest one to look at. The reason why it's the hardest to look at is because that's where everything's already taken place. That's where everything's already happened. You know, that's where the scars come from. That's where the bruises come from. The scratches, the pain, the hurt. When we look into our past, we can see these things. You know, right above my stomach right here, there's a line right here from when I was a little kid. It's a scar. How many people here tonight actually have a scar on their body? Probably everyone, or else you were in a bubble. Okay, no bubble people, very good. So I have this scar from here to here. And whenever I see that scar, you know what happens? I go back to that exact moment of how it happened, what took place, where I was at. This scar right here actually took place because I was riding a bike. I was out, and right down the street we had these these guys were good. These were like the BMX dudes that were like going to be in magazines, gonna be on TV, gonna be doing the cool shows and all that stuff. And they would get out on their BMXs, and they would, spin the front tire, and they'd come up in the air and throw their legs off, and they'd get down to the bike track, and they'd go tearing up around the corners, and they would do these flips. There was a jump that had a hill here and a hill on the other side. In the middle, there was a big old puddle. And they would come up this jump, and they would actually flip like this, and they'd come down the other side. Well, me being like, I was about 9 years old at the time, and I was like, you know what, I think I got this. Now, they were like 15, 16, not saying you have to be that old to do this. There's no age limit. I couldn't do it at 9, I couldn't do it at 15, 16. I'm not even going to dare trying it today. That's why I have a beach cruiser, not a dirt bike. Because you give me anything that could actually involve a jump, I'm in big trouble. But what happened was I said, you know what, I got this. And I came up and I started running around that corner, and I headed for that ramp, and I hit that ramp, and I started to pull up on those handlebars. The next thing you know, the bike was upside down, and I came off it. So I end up in the mud puddle, and the bike comes down on me. So now I have a scratch across my chest. So every time I look at that, I say, that's when I came down off that mud puddle. That's when I laid down in that dirt. That's when the handlebars came across and cut me. And that's when I realized I was never going to be a BMX star. Okay, I realized that those guys were going to be in magazines, and I was not going to be in magazines. Here's the deal. When we see our scars, we remember what took place. We remember what happened. We remember how we got those scars, how we got those scratches, how we got those bruises. But you see, those scars are important to look at. They're important to focus on. Because here's the deal. Tonight, talking about our past, this whole series is about knowing God's direction. Seeing what He has for us. Seeing what's ahead of us. And here's the deal. We can't know what God has for us unless we know what God has done in us. Now, am I saying that, God had me fall off that bike and land in a mud puddle, and that's what God had for me? Well, as I was driving around, I had to stop for a minute, and I was like, well, I am about to use it as an illustration and a message. And if that never happened, I couldn't use that. I couldn't stop for a minute and say, hey, I remember this one time. Everything that happens to us is something that we can use. And if we don't know what God has done in us, it's hard to know what God has for us. This whole series is about knowing the direction that God has for us. And when we look at our past, we want to look at our past through not our eyes, but through God's eyes. We want to look through our past and look at it as if God was looking at it. And sometimes we have to step back 20 feet and look in to see what's going on. Okay? It is important that we remember our past so we can use it. We had Newcomers Coffee, and I know Ryan this weekend, he was sharing with everybody in the church, and he said that due to an experience that took place in his past, he made a decision that, I'm able to take this situation and I'm able to use it to help people. That's taking your past and saying, I'm not just going to run from my past. Yeah, that was a bad day. That was a tragic day. That was a hard day. But I'm going to take that day and I'm going to use it to help someone else. And ultimately, that's what our past is awesome for. Our past can be one of two things. It's either one, a weapon that we can beat ourselves to death with, or two, it's a tool that we can give somebody life with. And you see right there, we have a choice. Here's the deal. When we look at our past, I know for me, I didn't have a lot of control over some of the things that happened in my past. But can I tell you that today I have a lot of control over what I do with it? I have no control over what people did to me. I had no control over some of the hurts. Now, don't get me wrong, I made some dumb choices. I made some bad decisions. And I got consequences for that stuff. And I could sit there and say, man, I wish that never happened. But can I tell you that as I look back at my life, there's not one time that I can look at and say, man, I wish that didn't happen. And there's some things that happen in my life that if I were to look at them with different eyes, I would sit there and say, man, I could get depressed. I could shut down. I could ball up. Or I could stop and I could say, wait a minute, each and every one of these situations. At Newcomers Coffee, I shared that I came from the world and everything that came with it. And that means that when you come into my office and you talk to me and I tell you don't do something, it's probably because I did it. It's probably because I know exactly what's going to happen. But here's the reality. There's a lot of people that walk around and they think that because of their past is going to limit them on what they can do. Have you ever heard somebody say that? Why can't I do that because of my past? Why can't I do this because of my past? Do you know what your past makes possible for you? Your past, your unique past, the unique situations that you've gone through, make it possible for you to do things that other people can't. Let's say, for instance, if you had a problem drinking, and you have somebody who's suffering in the depths of that addiction. Do you know that people who are suffering in that don't relate to people who are not? But when you're able to walk up to that person and say, hey, you know what? I may not know, and here's the reality. In life I've had to stop and I've had to slow down and realize that even though I've gone through situations in my life, doesn't mean I know what somebody's going through. We are all different. We all experience things differently. So I may not know exactly what you're going through, but I've been down that road you're walking on. I've been down that road you're walking on. You see, when you have things in your life that are taking place, you can either say, you know what, I'm going to let this handicap me. I'm going to let this keep me back. Or you can take your past and break through. You can get through that. If you've dealt with suicide, you're able to help somebody who's in that place, that dark place. Let it be an abusive relationship. How many times do we hear about that on the news today? Abuse all over the place. You know, this weekend, I love when a series lines up with Sunday morning series, and I can honestly tell you I didn't try to have that happen. But this last weekend, we're talking about hidden hurts and hidden scars on Sunday. And this message lines right up with that. You know, we turn on the news and we see these things that are taking place in people's lives. You know, if you've been raped, you can help somebody who's been raped. If you've dealt with abortion, you can help someone who's dealt with abortion. Whatever that thing is in your past, we have to take the darkness off it and shine some light on it. You see, we have to take the devil off it and shine some Jesus on it. Because when we shine Jesus down onto our past, he can use that in our future. He can use that to help somebody. So what are we going to do tonight? Are we going to use our past as a weapon to beat ourselves to death, or a tool to help someone, to give someone life? When we're looking at our past, we need to stop and we need to look at what really took place. Honestly look at situations and see what took place. Because when we looked at the definition of vision, we said what? Vision is a mental image that can be produced by the imagination. So sometimes when we're looking at our past, we're not even looking at a true picture of our past. So we have to open our eyes and see our past for what it really is. We need to slow down and say, okay, what really took place here? Who's really at fault here? Was I really right in that situation? Was I really wrong? Like I said last week, we may owe somebody an apology. Can I tell you that there's nothing so freeing as letting someone else go? You know, I can't tell you how many people I've had to walk up to and say, hey, you know what? I'm sorry for what took place there. And 9 out of 10 times that person says, hey man, it's all good. Don't worry about it, dude. And I walk away free from it. You know why? Because I'm saying, you know what? My life is not going to have control over me. My past is not going to have control over me. I'm going to use my past as a tool. And in order for me to do that, I have to see my past, not perfectly, not perfect vision, clear vision, 2020. I have to see it clearly. And sometimes, you know, we look at our past, and I get it, bad things happen to good people. And bad things happen to people. And bad things happen to bad people too. But the reality is, if we will slow down for a minute, sometimes, if we look at it, sometimes we'll see where we're at fault. Sometimes we'll see where someone else was at fault. But you know, every once in a while, we have the part in it, no matter what. There's some part that we played in that situation. And sometimes the part that we play is we carry it with us. Maybe you were in a situation that you had nothing wrong in that situation, except for the fact that you carried it with you. You've been lugging it around with you. It's one thing to use your past in your future. It's another thing to drag your past around with you. So I don't tell people to forget their past. I tell them to let go of their past. Let go of whatever stigma is attached to it. And maybe you had a perfect life and a perfect childhood, and that's fantastic. It's hard for me to relate with that. You know, these guys that gave their lives to Jesus at 3, and they've been walking on water ever since. I have a hard time with that. But there's people like that, and that's an example in itself, saying, hey, you know what? We're all different. We all come from different areas. And the fact that I live this life means that you can live this life too. You know, the fact that I overcame my past means that you can overcome your past. That God can do something in your life. And God can do something in someone else's life through your life. Another thing about our past is we need to know our past so we do not repeat it. Einstein's definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. If we don't stop for a minute and see what we've done, we're bound to do it again. You know, sometimes we look at our past and we see where we've been and what's going on, but yet we fall back into that trap. We go back down that road. Anybody know what I'm talking about tonight? that if we walk away for just a second, if we lax up just a little bit, we're going to find ourselves going, wait a minute, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't do this anymore. I don't live like that anymore. I want to talk to you about Noah for a minute. And I'm not talking about Noah from that movie. Now, I'm not going to knock that movie down. This is why I'm not going to knock that movie down. I went to a conference, and I heard this speaker talking about God's not dead and Noah. And it's funny, before Noah got released, his congregation had asked him, what movie do you think God's going to use? And he said, God's going to use Noah. And he said, because you know how many non-Christians are going to go to God's not dead? He said, furthermore, God knows he's not dead. He said, he'll use Noah. Do you know that the day after Noah was released in theaters, the Bible YouVersion app on your phone, if you do not have it downloaded onto your phone, you can have the Bible anywhere you go. It's an amazing thing. You can read the Bible, you can listen to the Bible. It'll brighten your day up just like that. But do you know that that app was downloaded, Genesis itself, 300 times more than it ever had been, period. So that's direct evidence that people came out of that movie, went to that app and said, you know what? I need to know about this story of Noah. And regardless of what that director did on that film, they know what the Bible says now. Because they went back and read it. So anyway, I want to talk to you about Noah. And here's the deal with Noah. Everybody knows that Noah, God had decided that, the world had fallen. The world had fallen. And he decided that he was going to destroy the earth. But Noah found favor. Noah found favor in God. And God said, you know what? We're going to build an ark. So he builds this ark. He gets in the ark, and him and his family are saved. We pick up at Genesis 9 and verse 1. After the flood, they step out on the dry land, him and his family. And this is what, then God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. Now, isn't this awesome? That God has delivered them from a situation. And as soon as he's delivered them from the situation, he blesses them. Anybody relate with that? That you come out of your horrific past and God immediately blesses you? And says, you know what? You don't live like that anymore. This is what I have for you. Well, that's what God does here. And he says, what? Go and increase. What do we want to increase and multiply? What is good? What is good? And he has blessed this. He said, this is good. And he says, multiply. Now, this is what I want to talk about, repeating our past. Because if we're not mindful, it'll happen. If you read in Genesis 9, verse 20 through 21, first off, how many people knew that Noah was a farmer? Anybody know Noah's a farmer? Well, Noah was a farmer. And that's what also makes it really, really interesting that he's building this ark. Because he's a farmer. And in chapter 9, verse 20 through 21, Noah has been saved from this amazing flood, and he's what? Back to doing what he does. He's a farmer. Verse 20, Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of the wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent. Now look, I want you to go back and read this tonight. If you read Genesis through the story of Noah, when you get to this part, you know what happened? You'll read past it really, really quick. And when you get past it, you're going to hear that, Ham comes in and he embarrasses his dad, and you're kind of sitting here and you're like, okay, what's going on here? And then you see that Noah gets really, really upset, and he puts a curse on him, but then he blesses his brothers. But if you're not careful, you can read past that really, really quick. But here's what's happening here. You ready for this? God destroyed the earth and the people on it. Why? Because they were evil. Because they were sinners. Is that not correct? Because of the sin and the evil in the earth. And no sooner had Noah been delivered from this. No sooner had Noah been blessed. And what's he doing? He's sinning. And if you're not careful, if you read too fast, sometimes you got to slow down just a little bit and go, wait a minute, what's going on here? He's sinning. Now, what happened with the son and the curse and all that, I'm going to come back to that, but it's not going to be tonight. Because this is actually really, really cool, and I really, really want to get into it, but it's in another whole entire series that I'm going to bring out in a couple weeks. But here's the deal. If we're not careful, we'll do the things that we've done. We'll do the things that God has saved us from. That's why it's important that we know our past. That's why it's important that we focus on our past. Because I don't know about you, I don't want to do the things that I've done. I don't want to be the person that I was. I want to be the person that God created me to be. And you know, if you were following me on Facebook, I said, Noah, I know something about your past. And if you come out, I'm going to share it with you. This is what I know about your past. That you did not surprise God. You did not catch God off guard. When you did whatever you did, when you were involved in whatever you were involved in, you did not catch God off guard. You did not do something and God looked down and said, well, I didn't see that coming. Oh my, he's special. That's not how it happened. You see, God knows. You know, we try to be quiet. We try to walk around in these secret lives. We keep things quiet, but you know what? God knows. The Bible says it's going to be revealed. Might as well get it out now. Get that stuff out. Settle whatever's going on. Face whatever's happened. Come clean in the situations. Take blame. Take fault. Or just pick it up and move on. Use it to help someone. This is the deal. Psalm 139:16 says this. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. Before one day came to be, he knew. That means no matter what happened in your past, God knew about it. You didn't catch him off guard. He's the creator of heaven and earth. And he knows us down to our core. I don't know about you, but that gets me really, really excited. That hypes me up that God knows me like that. And that he could take the things that I've done and use them for what he wants me to do. And it's time that we as a church, we stop and we look at those things. We don't just brush them off and say we're going to go on with our lives like nothing ever happened. No. We slow down and say, wait a minute, how can I use this to help someone? Because here's the deal, guys. 2 Corinthians 5:17 through 20. I want you to repeat these words after me. You ready for this? Everybody. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone. The new is here. Do you get this? The old is gone. And the new has come. You see, regardless of what you did, while you did not catch God off guard, he sent Jesus to die for it. He sent Jesus to suffer the cross for the sins that we committed, to forgive us, to wash us, to clean us. All this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. That God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting people's sins against them. And he has committed to us the message of reconciliation. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. Be his ambassadors. It's saying to go out, represent Christ and say, I don't know what the world can do for you, but let me show you what my Jesus can do for you. Let me show you what my Jesus has done for me. Because here's the thing. God's going to forgive your sins, and he's going to use your past. It's time that we step outside of ourselves. We look at our past and we say, how am I going to use this? This is the question I want you to answer this week. I want you to honestly sit down and think about this week. How am I going to use my past to help someone else? Because every single thing you have is a gift from God above. And he loves you. There's hurts, there's scars, there's pains, and there's people suffering. I want to encourage you to do for someone else what Jesus has done for you. If this is your first time with us, I want to welcome you once again. Thank you so much for being here. And if you don't know the layout of Refuel, we do a half-hour message and a half-hour prayer. I'd say we bring down the lights, but if we brought it down much more, it'd be pitch black. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to bring up the music. You can sit and pray. You can walk around and pray. Put your prayers. I want to encourage you guys, put your prayers on the prayer boards. And at the very end, I'll come up and I'll pray over you. Thank you guys so much for being here. And we'll come back together and pray at the end.